On June 9, 2016, the Utah Court of Appeals issued the decision in Fish v. Fish, a case dealing with a petition to lower the alimony award. Here is the citation to that decision, and we've included it in the description section of this report as well. Diane Fish filed for divorce from Jeffrey Fish in 2007. The divorce decree ordered Jeffrey to pay alimony of $800 per month. Then in 2012, Jeffrey filed a petition seeking to terminate or reduce the alimony award based on an alleged change in Diane's income. The trial court found that from 2009 to 2014, Diane's monthly income had risen by $264 and that her monthly reasonable and necessary expenses had risen by $492 over that same time period. The court determined that this did not constitute a material change in circumstances and that thus there were no grounds to modify the divorce decree. Jeffrey appealed, contending, among other things, that the district court 1. Failed to follow the law of the case that Diane is capable of working 36 hours per week, 2. Failed to find that Diane was voluntarily underemployed, and 3. Failed to find that an unforeseen material substantial change in circumstances warranted modification of the decree. At the modification trial, Diane's accountant and her employer both testified that Diane worked less than the 36 hours per week she was found to have worked back in 2009, when the decree was entered. The district court's factual finding back in 2011 that Diane was working 36 hours a week did not necessarily constitute a ruling that held Diane to a 36-hour work week in 2014. Nor was it clear that the court's 2011 finding was relevant to determining the number of hours Diane was capable of working in 2014. In any event, while a case remains pending before the district court prior to any appeal, the court remains free to reconsider that decision, and so what the court found in 2011 was not binding on the court in 2014 anyway. While it is true that a court may impute income to a former spouse for purposes of calculating alimony after finding that the former spouse is voluntarily unemployed or underemployed, a finding of voluntary underemployment does not require a court to impute the higher income. It merely allows the court to do so. Because Jeffrey cited no authority for the argument that Diane must be imputed the higher income that he asserted, and moreover, the fact that Diane was working 36 hours per week in 2011 did not appear relevant to determining whether working 30 hours per week in 2014 was reasonable. Jeffrey contended that the district court failed to find that there was a substantial change of circumstances, not foreseeable at the time of the divorce, that justified a modification of alimony. But Jeffrey did not establish that the court should have imputed more income to Diane than she was actually earning, and thus Diane's actual increase in income was much smaller than what Jeffrey argued. And thus, because the Utah Code is concerned with whether an alleged change of circumstances was foreseeable, not whether the alleged change of circumstances was actually foreseen and accounted for in a divorce decree, an increase of income not actually contemplated by the divorce decree does not automatically require a finding that a substantial material change in circumstances not foreseeable at the time of the divorce occurred. Jeffrey argued that because Diane's 2014 income is higher than her income at the time of the divorce decree, the district court was required to find that a substantial material and unforeseeable change in circumstances had occurred. The Court of Appeals disagreed, holding that such is a question of trial court discretion, not of correctness. So the trial court had discretion to determine that Diane's $2 per hour increase in pay over a 5-year period was not a material and substantial change. The trial court was considering whether to modify alimony at all rather than how much to modify alimony. The district court's statutory duty to calculate the appropriate amount of alimony is only triggered in a modification proceeding once the court has determined that modification is appropriate based on a substantial material change in circumstances not foreseeable at the time of the divorce. As a result, because the trial court determined that no such change had occurred, it was under no duty to enter new findings as to Diane's earning capacity. The moral of the story of Fish versus Fish: it's very hard to modify alimony.